independent studies from many, many different universities around the world, because they're all looking at it right now, because this is the only way that they can protect themselves, because they recognize that every government in the world right now recognizes that this is a bioweapon. China's holding its cards close to its chest, doesn't want to admit, because all they care about is saving face, even if it means the rest of the world has to suffer. Because, and when I say China, I want to be very clear here that I'm not referring to Chinese people at all. So the point I'm getting at is that now the situation is this, which is that the Chinese government, not Chinese people per se, but the Chinese government is basically in a situation right now where they're trying to cover their tracks because they don't want you to find out. Like they kind of don't care if you find out it's a bioweapon, but they would prefer you not know, so they're really kind of going out of their way, and they're not doing a great job of saving face at it because they don't know how to play poker face in that way. They know how to obscure, but like a direct head-on poker face game, they're horrible at it. And that's what we're seeing now. Every time someone asks them, hey, is this a bioweapon? Or anytime you ask a question on, social media, you're getting blocked, shadow banned, or whatever else, because they're all in the bed, because they're thinking, oh, once this blows over, China's going to, reward us little pats on the head for covering for them. But that's not what's going on here. We're dealing with a different type of weaponry that actually Dennis Kucinich warned us about. But I'll come back to that later. So these molecules, they heat up. But in the process, some molecules in the normal biological function of your body are requiring the electrocatalytic phenomenon that occurs among your ATP to pass electromagnetic or electrostatic discharges to agitate those individual molecules that these cells are built out of. Remember, it's like basically you're looking at let me give you an example. If someone were to say that the average human cell, and if someone says, hey, let me make a human cell a particular scale, let's say a human cell, the human body, right? Let's say the human body is like, made out of golf balls or even ping pong balls, or we'll say marbles. We'll say the human body's made out of hydrogen, right? And however many hydrogen atoms you can fit in the space of a human body, your human body, right? A balloon made out of a balloon shaped in the same shape as your human body. That's the area of space you're taking up. But let's say that not even a McDonald's. Let's say a McDonald's. Let's say a McDonald's, like a pretty nice size McDonald's. A pretty nice size McDonald's is about the same size as a human blood cell, right? And your body is the size as a human receptor, a receptor on a cell, a cellular receptor, right? Made out of hydrogen atoms, which are about, we'll say the smallest one you can get is a marble, a small marble, right? Or even a bearing, even a ball bearing. So that's all the amount of atoms you would need. I know that's not the best description or the most accurate, but I'm trying to give you an understanding, which is, so the human cell is made out of the biggest McDonald's or a nice size McDonald's, right? All the space that is taken up with larger golf ball size atoms, right? That are iron, or some other element like carbon or whatever else have you. We're talking about scaling up. Now, that human body would make up a receptor, and it could easily attach to the outside of it. I'm telling you this because here's what's happening. When we look at these cells, we're thinking about this gooey little tiny mess, but it's really just a bunch of atoms stacked, and they're transferring electromagnetic charges, one electron to the next, at least through the Gaussian field, one electron at a time. So when your cell heats up, all that's happening is that they're moving this electromagnetic field from one atom to the next, which is causing them to vibrate. That vibration is causing these atoms to generate thermal radiation. That thermal radiation that's being generated is what your body uses to cook off bacteria, right? But what ends up happening is that when you get a virus or something, it basically is it's using your body's chemistry to create a thermal insulative field so that all of your body doesn't heat up properly, so that it has somewhere to hide in your body, like your lymphs or certain areas or certain portions of your body with muscle tissue where it can still feed, right? Or areas that don't have proper drainage, cleaning, or places that it would take your white blood cells some time to get to. Now, getting back to the situation where we're at now, when we're dealing with viruses, we're talking about organisms that have to, mask themselves. And when they're masking themselves, they're covering themselves in, a blanket of those little molecular balloons. And what they're here's something that I had to check on just to make sure. Your bacteria are communicating through either they're sensing their environment in the host through temperature changes, but they're also sensing and navigating their way through the body or a host or some other particular cellular component by having a good grasp at the biological level of what their Y coordinate is, what their X coordinate is, and what their Z coordinate is. So they know the difference between up, down, left, right, north, and south, right? They're aware of that inside of a host. So they can figure out if I need to swim up or I need to swim down, right? So what we're dealing with here in regards to this is that they have basically taken some base genetic material of the coronavirus. They've taken some base genetic material so we're talking about a cluster of of cohesive biological material at the genetic level. They've taken that from the coronavirus. They've taken that. Now, see, here's the funny part. The coronavirus was picked because it's a great delivery system. It's a great bacterial biological delivery system for something along the lines of a respiratory infection. So when you're conducting biological warfare, you want to find a pathogen or an organism, microorganism, that is already biologically specialized. So if you're saying, I want someone to get a disease, then you would find a sexually transmitted disease and you would splice that. And then you would infect, the regular vector, which is, prostitute, whether it's male or female. You'd find them. More likely, the fastest spreading vector would probably be a female prostitute. So you infect her and her ilk and all of her friends. You tell them you got some free cocaine, and it's really not cocaine. It's really cocaine with some other particulate matter version of a substance. Oh, you're going to sniff? No, I don't sniff. I thought it was for you. You know what I mean? She doesn't know she's sniffing not an aerosol, but a powder, near anthrax sort of version. I can't remember the exact term is, but essentially she, that's one method. So if you're like, I want to infect the population based on, something that's more active in the stomach. Okay, then I'll find something I can spray on food. Well, that's good at living on food. That would be the opposite. I'm sorry, what?
We talked about the sexual transmutation or that would be the most viable way of communalizing the virus would be the virus, right?
So yes. Let me get into that. So here's where we're at now. This is just now that I've given you that quick little incredibly boring science lesson, right? Here's something to understand. When I say this is not a virus, as we know, viruses, at least not even in the way that we've been taught or we think we've been, communicated what a viral weapon is, whether it's retro or not. And it's a retrovirus, but it's not a retrovirus in the way that we know. This is something far more advanced. This is definitely regular. This is definitely some.
I want to interject something really quick.
I'm sorry, what?
You mentioned something, and I just want to interject something really quick. Just like the insect world, folks, these microorganisms are telepathic, and they're highly intelligent. So I just wanted to remind everybody that.
Let me say something about that. The catch-22 is that viruses function more like robots. They don't have any RNA, and without the RNA, they can't really do. Let me put it this way: viruses are not okay. So, I'm sorry. Bear with me. Viruses have an ability. I'm sorry, not viruses, but microbes, bacteria. They have an ability to quantumly entangle themselves. So it's easier. Like, here's something crazy: bacteria, whether anyone is comfortable with admitting it in the medical world, demonstrate an ability to pick up message, like most people don't even know, cells transmit at a 1.5 kilohertz frequency range. So we're talking about, so when we talk about, well, how are they doing that? Well, they're made of atoms, so they're using those electromagnetic fields that are produced by their cellular construction to communicate to each other. And sometimes certain types of communication is observable or detectable by your white blood cells, so they may not use those. So other types of communication that they may use are chemical messages, and once those bacteria or viruses pick up those chemical messages, it's basically they're crawling around in the dark, right? The bacteria is crawling around in the dark. While it's crawling around in the dark, it's waiting for certain particular it's waiting for a particular frequency range that's happening as it's passing other material that lets it know, oh, this is a message, this is an electrical signal being sent from this type of chemical message. We make that message, okay, that means I'm near my brethren. Now I'll start communicating. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that don't communicate now. But the point is, to sum it up, the Chinese basically spliced together the coronavirus because they wanted to be able to use it to infect the lungs, right? Because most biological most medication that you could have used would have killed it off if it was spliced into something like a common cold or something like that. You could have gotten rid of it. But they were like, no, we want something that has a long duration. And we want something that has a long duration in the lungs that's not familiar, because a familiar bacteria, it's already sequenced, so we'll know what's been spliced into it. So they're like, no, let's get this coronavirus. So they get the coronavirus, right? Splice that up. Then they go and get SARS. Now, we'll come back to the SARS thing in a second. And then they turn around and then they go and get, because remember, if you're making a biological weapon and you want to completely make every aspect of your enemy's life difficult, you're going to affect things like their comfort time for breathing, their comfort time for eating, their comfort time for sexual pleasure, their comfort time for breeding, all these different areas of normal human activities. And that's basically what you're looking at in the coronavirus, is that they basically went and said, let's create a virus that we can spread that will actively function on all levels of your socialization. So now you've got a virus with AIDS in it. So if you fuck the wrong person, you're transmitting it. Then you have a virus where maybe if you fuck someone, but excuse my French, maybe if you have sex with someone, I apologize.
On the show.
Maybe if you have, bleep that. Yeah, sorry. So maybe if you have sex with someone, but then you get the virus, but the virus is not doing anything, we're going to splice it with herpes so that way, even if you decide to touch yourself and then you touch something, the virus can live outside of the body for anywhere from 3 hours to 8 weeks. So because they're trying to figure out, well, how is it living on surfaces for this long period of time? It's like, because it was spliced with herpes. So then it persists on the surface of the host. So anytime the host may touch itself, it's spreading it somewhere else. So then they were like, we're going to make it with AIDS, so you just can't get rid of it, and it'll keep morphing. So it'll keep biologically morphing while it's in the host, and every time it gets to a new host, to optimize itself biologically. That's what people aren't realizing. AIDS changes every time with new host.
I want to get to I want to kind of tie this in, because one of the guests in the live chat room is talking about the black goo and the programmable flesh and the parasites and so forth.
So funny you should mention that. So the problem is the Chinese decided that they were going to use SARS, but apparently whoever was helping them, we all know who it is. It's on record now publicly. You can Google who's responsible for it. Who helped set up the Wuhan lab. We all know. The problem is that when they were using the base material, because it's obvious now their original target to test was some of the male Uyghur captives at the concentration camps, because they've got a couple million of them. No one will miss it. No one will notice if one or two are missing, right? And they were also planning on using it, because this is what we're dealing with. Now, some people say, that's all lies and rumors and speculation. It's like, no, they're demonstrating to you their method every day. Like, I don't care what's going on with the trade deals, they're demonstrating to you their method every day. So here's what happens. And this is going back to what the person in the chat room was saying. They weren't